Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all. This is Coach Rose, AJ Carnivore Girl for Life, and Adrian at Adrian Gladhill. You changed it.
I
You
did.
changed it from the Biggest Loser
Copyright
Carnivore.
laws.
Oh, so we'll get into that in a sec. So let me just catch people up, Adrian. So this is actually our second time in collaboration together, you guys, as far as bringing a live, because I want to learn how to do more lives and connect with a broader audience and whatnot. So me and Adrian, we have a lot of similarities, even though I'm 15 to 18 years ahead of her. I forget how old I am ahead of you, Adrian.
I just turned
But I'm
40.
okay, so I'm almost about 17 years ahead of her. And but there's a lot of similarities that we have in our storylines in our lives and whatnot that we want to draw upon for a couple of episodes for you guys. So if you guys missed the first one, you can either go to Adrian's YouTube channel or her Instagram page or mine to catch up on that, where we essentially talked about the first 17, 18 years of our lives. And that's where we're going to pick up tonight, right? How Adrian got to the biggest loser, how I got on the Today Show, what drove us there. And Adrian's going to talk about 12 steps, the 12-step program. And then I'm going to follow up or learn a little bit more about it and explain why I never did anything like that. So, Adrian, why don't you go ahead and pick up where we left off and however you want to start with the biggest loser, and we can go from there.
I'm wondering if I did something that's so typical with trauma. And so I'm wondering if we could rewind for a second. You brought up
Absolutely.
something really, really deep and really tough. And you shared with us how you had been hurt sexually as a child. And in a way, I had been too. And I never asked you, how has that transformed? How did you overcome that? What was it like? What were the effects of that? I never asked that because, like so many people, once somebody says something really uncomfortable, you just go. And I think it's important to actually talk about what are the effects and how did that transpire and what happened.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. And quite candidly, it would take at least a show for you and I to go through and explain that. But I'll just give a really broad overview. It was food that helped me get through. It was food, essentially, from 3.5 forward food. And as far as coping and keeping it together, there was just an internal knowing that even though I was alone, I was not really alone because of a higher power, if that makes sense. I always rooted for the underdog because I was the underdog, right, Adrian? And I was always a fighter, a loudmouth, the whole nine, rallying the troops because I needed the troops to rally around me. So everything that I was doing, it was because I needed it for me, right? So there was a lot of soul searching through like bibliotherapy, Phil Donahue, just watching Oprah Winfrey and mimicking some of the things that they did that I thought was healthy. I severed ties with most of my biological family, and the ones that stayed in my life that I allowed to stay in my life was because I thought that they didn't do any damage to me that warranted complete cutting of ties, and because I wanted my daughter to know some of her extended family, but when she turned 18 I cut it all off because I was still resentful to them. I just held my head down and worked. I'm a hard worker, and with the syndrome of I got to do better, and nobody can take care of me but me, and I've got to take care of my daughter. That's what kind of pushed me through, along with multiple other cross addictions that kept me afloat. And I think we can schedule something like that in the future where we just focus on childhood sexual trauma and how it has an impact not only on the individual that is the victim, but the future generations that are to come, right? But I'm not a victim. I was a victim, right? And I'm an actual warrior. So that's the mindset that I had to take on. But the addiction to food was really what kept me level because I had something to look forward to, something to relieve the stress. It wasn't the best choice, but it was the best choice that I could make. And I'm just free now. I'm finally free. Yeah.
It's so much better than so many other
Yeah.
choices that are
Yeah.
often made,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. I know in
Yeah.
our family, my sisters and I all went in a different direction. My 2 sisters, they because of all that we were exposed to, they are, like, hyperactive, and then I went into a shell, like, I didn't want anybody to touch me ever, and it honestly kinda took I mean, obviously God, but also a really loving man. I got really fortunate to have a second husband who was so loving to get me through that and to help me and just I'm not relying on him to have comfort in my own body, but he really, really helped, and I feel really
Yeah.
blessed there, but mostly it's God, and when we go into the 12 steps, you're gonna just be shocked that even if you didn't have the 12 steps, you already have the biggest piece that got me
Yeah.
through all this. So, I don't remember where we left off exactly. Did we stop in high school,
Yeah,
and
we
now we're
stopped
gonna
in
go
high
on with
school.
life? Yeah,
Yeah,
so high school,
so
you go ahead.
no, no, dear, you go ahead. You go ahead.
So high school, I'm super active, and this is my way of coping and trying to find value in myself. My mom is gone. I've been overweight. I've been bullied. I lose my grandma who was suffering from alcoholism, who was really abusive. But it ultimately took her life. And so there's, some sadness, but we're working through things. Life is getting better. I have my stepmom now. Um, so I go to college and I gained 60 pounds in the first year. And so I'm overweight and I'm back to this. Of course, I'm not unlovable. It's almost like I gained this weight to put that barrier around me so that it can be true, that I can justify that I feel that nobody loves me and I don't love myself. Like I purposely put this barrier on myself. So I try some dieting, and my first summer I do the Atkins, I lose some weight, gain it all back. And that's when I find out about the TV show The Biggest Loser. And I don't know how much we wanna go into that. I mean, it was emotionally crazy. Any reality TV show is a pressure cooker. You are in this game 24/7. There's no break. It's emotional. Your dreams are, some sure. The reality TV shows that there's $1,000,000 on the line that could change your life, sure. So maybe that's relatable to your dreams coming true because of reality TV. But Biggest Loser is really like your dream could come true. You could finally not be a big person. You could finally beat this thing that you have been trying your whole life to beat. And when that didn't happen and my dreams were kind of crushed, it triggered me into I had lost 66 pounds on that show. It triggered me into a 100 plus pound weight gain. So then I get right after the show, I meet a guy, and he very much tells me he's not interested. But I'm so confident that I force the issue. I put my phone number in his phone. He's like, "No, really, I'm good." Like the guy never liked me from the minute I met him. But that's just kind of what I thought I deserved was a guy that doesn't really like me, I guess. And so the whole marriage was incredibly loveless, and I was being gaslit constantly. I was being lied to. It was a horrible marriage. I was very alone. I don't know how many people out there can relate with. I feel like being married and alone is more lonely than being alone and lonely because you're trapped, or you at least feel trapped. And I was constantly being told that everything was in my head. We go on it's all of my pregnancies were kinda hard because I struggled to get pregnant, and then I didn't have any milk for my kids, and I would try, and I would try, and I would try, and no milk would come out. And so not being able to feed your child, I felt like that was very traumatic. Um, Raising the kids basically by myself because I was in a marriage by myself, basically, that was really hard. I After my second child is when life really changed because I saw I had my first child, I breastfeed him. When the breastfeeding ends, because there's not any milk there. I go back to drinking, and it was really ugly. I had no tolerance. It was just really sloppy. I don't specifically remember exactly what I did that was so sloppy, but I remember when I got pregnant with my daughter being relieved that I
Mm.
couldn't drink anymore. And so I'm pregnant with her, I breastfeed, and then I breastfeed for 6 months, and when that's over, I try drinking again, and now it's even uglier. And this is not something you would forget. I mean, blacking out forget, sure, but, like,
Yeah.
it was
Mm.
ugly. It was like I'd wake up and I had peed on the stairs. Not cute. And so very quickly, I mean, within a month of this experiment of mine, I joined a 12-step program because was not going to have this around my kids. The better, like you said, you're driven to do better for this generation than what you had. So I was not going to be my grandma. I was not going to have that around my kids. And although I wasn't like a mean person, I was being so sloppy. Here's one thing. I was so afraid that I could black out and pick up a child and drop them down the stairs that as I was drinking my wine in bed, I would handcuff myself to the bed. I don't know if you've ever heard of like how crazy this is.
No,
So I know
no.
I've got an issue because I'm handcuffing myself to my bed because I'm afraid of blacking out and then hurting a child.
Yeah.
So I knew I needed to quit drinking. That's how ugly it was, guys. So I
So
joined a
can
12-step program.
so before we get to the 12 step, Adrian, we've
Yes.
missed a lot because we're 11, 12 minutes in. So we've missed a lot. What I wanted to hone in on with The Biggest Loser first and foremost is you thought that it was going to cure you and all this good stuff. But would you mind talking about your surgery, how it did or didn't work,
Oh.
and all that good stuff? Because that should be a part of this conversation because we can't just skim over The Biggest Loser and maybe some of the behind the scenes things because I was really obsessed with it as well because I wanted to be one of those biggest losers, right? Yeah. So can you hone in a little
Mhm.
bit more on that?
Some people are gonna disagree with what I'm about to say, but I feel like the people behind the scenes had really good intent. Like the producers, we met them. They had really good intent to inspire America to get healthy. Dr. Huizenga behind the scenes, he was very science-based, and I got to do a lot of work with him because of the way the show was structured, where the other contestants didn't get as much time with him. So there was 50 people, one person from every state. The first day, 36 people went home. That was me. And whoever lost the most weight at home got to come back on the show. And Dr. Huizenga was in charge of us that were at home, and we also had a nutritionist and a therapist, and we had weekly calls. So we had all this support. We had a camera to document everything. We had a gym membership. We had an entire plan based on our body because he did a DEXA scan, a bod pod, which is like an egg that you go in. We did a float test. We did a cardiovascular test. He did all kind of blood testing. He tested us to the nines, and then he gave each of us a plan. So my plan was 1,274 calories a day, broken into 3 meals and 2 snacks, perfectly spread out, and an hour and a half in the morning and an hour in the evening, some lifting every day, but a lot of cardio. The food was to be whole foods, mostly low fat and mostly vegetables. The standard. Like what I'm saying, guys, is exactly what you're being told to do at home, right? So I did end up losing more weight than everybody at home and everybody on set who had the magical trainers. So when I went back on the show, they did not like me. Okay, so I get on the show and here's some things that people don't know. I no longer get my doctor. I no longer have a nutritionist and I no longer have a psychologist. We are just on this fabulous ranch. It's like called the Hummingbird Nest Ranch. It's like a $33 million ranch in Semi Valley, California. Absolutely gorgeous paradise, truly. And another good thing that people picture that's true is we would just tell the production assistants what food we wanted and they would bring it. So we had the most if I wanted to eat smoked salmon every single day, I could. like whatever food you want. I'm obviously you can't order pizza, but none of us wanted pizza. So whatever food you wanted, anything you could imagine, they will bring it. So that was beautiful and wonderful. I also got to do the makeover. We had Warren Tacobi, I think is how you say it. Warren, he did my hair and it was like Edward Scissors hands and it was just so fun and we got to do a photo shoot and we got to fly. Sometimes I got to fly first class back and forth and that part is true, that part is glamorous, that part was fun. But the trainers were actually mostly there when the cameras were there, which was a couple times a week. Number 1. Number 2, no nutritionist, no doctor on set. If I had an issue like I was having leg cramps and not sleeping, I could not reach the doctor. I'd have to send it through a production system. Within a week or two, I'd get a vague answer back. um, what else? The weigh-ins were done in the morning. We were pretty much naked on a scale, and the scale that you see on TV is not real. And the filming of that was long, hours and hours and hours. And like you would have to redo your weigh in several times. So you'd have to like fake not knowing what your weight was. So the day I was voted out was like really traumatic. They could only get like 2 shots because the tears were flying down my face because I knew I was going home. What else is fake? The gym that we had was made out of vinyl. It was a vinyl tent that looked like a brick building. And so we had a vinyl tent in the middle of the desert. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of sweating going on. So it was a sweat lodge. And there were these fans that they would blow through. What do they call them? Gator fans with the coolers. But when they were filming like last chance workout, they had to turn the fans off for the cameras and the mics. So it's no wonder everybody's sweating and throwing up because we're working out in a sauna in the desert in the summer. So next thing is a week in TV is not the same as a week in real life. And I want to say some contestants said by the later seasons that they changed that because they got called out on it. But when you see someone losing 30 pounds in a week, it was probably 3 weeks.
Hey,
So trying
Adrian,
to keep up with this.
why didn't they
Yeah.
have an actual structure? Why were you guys out in a tent, a vinyl tent? What was the purpose of that?
Just because we were on this ranch that didn't
Mhm.
have this big, huge gym building, so they had to make one because it's TV. And so
Mm,
they weren't going to build an actual building. They were renting the Hummingbird Ranch, and so they just put a fake one up. Now, later seasons, they got a campus that had an actual brick and mortar building, but for my seasons and some other seasons, it was a fake. It's
okay,
TV. So that's my thing is
okay.
this was TV. It wasn't when we left the ranch, that was the first time I saw a therapist because they had like a beautiful black SUV, like the celebrities ride
Mhm,
in, and you get in
mhm.
and there's a guy there going with a notepad, "How are you
Yeah.
doing?" And you're like, "Not good," you know? And you get sent home and there's not much of a plan.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to be honest,
Mhm.
when they sent me home, it took about 5 minutes for me to start drinking because I was so nervous. I was so disappointed. I had this huge fear of failure. My metabolism was pretty much dead. My hormones were crazy, and so the minute I went home, I started gaining weight, and I started drinking, and that perpetuates not the behavior, and then you start gaining weight and then you start panicking and that snowballs it worse. And so I think I was the first person to ever go to the finale and gain weight. So this why you're asking me this too is because this plays
Mhm.
into the next 10 years until I have my surgery where I just feel like a failure. I hide. I have shame. I feel like I let everybody down. I feel like I let America down because millions of people watched the show and it replayed for like 10 years on Bravo.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, so
Oh,
you were on TV too. What
yeah,
happened there?
I was. So, when I finally thought I had the magical formula for myself, which was taking a break from the scale, learning about nutrition, and for 18 months from 2001 to 2003, lost 110 pounds, was running a lot, exercising a lot, over exercising, and my weight stabilized at a certain number, which was like, I think 190. And I was like, hoorah, this is it. But I was obsessively counting calories, still binging, compulsively overeating. I didn't get to the root of the problem, which essentially was mostly the types of food that I was eating first and foremost. And so, because I like to, back in the day, you might be a little young for this, but back in the day, we had to actually write letters. Adrian, we had to actually send emails to places like to get on the show. They want to know your story. So, More Magazine was a magazine for women 40 and older based in New York. And me and my husband was going to do a trip to New York. So I wrote to them, said, hey, I'm running your marathon. I want to be on the Today Show. So I was selected to be on the Today Show with Joy Bauer. And I went on and they showed everything that I ate prior to my weight loss, which was king size Snickers, hot dogs, rice, just you name it. They had a whole assortment of food and everything there was factual. What they missed, what I missed, and what the whole world missed was my addiction to sugar and my obsessiveness. And I really didn't help myself, right? And they didn't help me either. A couple of years later, they wanted to do like a reunion, people that had lost 100 pounds and kept it off. So I was called back to the show and went on with like 4 or 5 other people. It was really great. Joy Bauer was like this 90-pound lady, and I felt like a giant next to her, but it was awesome being there. I had maintained my weight for about 10 years, but it was just a pure hell. Yeah. So, yeah, it was hard.
Oh,
It was very, very hard. But that goes into the mental health disorder that most of us have when we're compulsive about food and we obsess about food, right? So all of that was missed. So I'm saying all that to say, and you're sharing all that you're sharing to say that we can still heal, right? Healing looks different for everyone. For everyone. And Adrian, you go ahead and share, and I'm going to check the comments. There's 2 comments going right now, but you go ahead and pick up where you were going to go with the 12 steps or wherever you were going to go.
so when I was on The Biggest Loser, I was 22 and it was in 2006. So we're not that far apart. And to get onto the show, I had to send in like a VHS. There was no, it was very similar. I think I sent in a paper application and a VHS tape. Of course, there was better things at that time, but that's all I had. There was no camera phones or anything like that, and so Biggest Loser. Afterwards, I gained over 100 pounds. I'm in a horrible marriage. I'm drinking. Um, I struggle to get pregnant. I'm tired. I'm the bread maker in our home. It was just really, really rough. And there were lots of thoughts of like, this isn't what I wanted in my life. And I don't want to live like this. And so after having my daughter, that's when I joined the 12-step program, which is before my surgery. So I joined my 12-step program. This is about 11 years ago, and quickly I start feeling better. Part of the 12-step program is about giving it to God. Part of the 12-step program is about accepting responsibility. So all the jobs I was in, I was having issues on every team I was in, but it was always someone else's fault. My family problems, it's always their fault. I wasn't good at seeing my part. And then I also wasn't good at seeing what can I control. I was too worried about what I couldn't control. The 12-step program was amazing for processing those things. And that really has helped me with my behavior. It also helped me. There was a part in there somehow of they have a lot of sayings like humility isn't thinking less about yourself, it's about thinking more about other people. I just
Mm,
love that. And for me, humility was before it was talking down about myself, like thinking less of myself, trying not to be boastful. Another thing, before my 12-step program, I constantly compared myself to other people. And through the 12-step program, I started seeing that we all have value and starting to have more compassion for other people of where they were. Where before I was either above or below people in my brain, always. And I think part of that too was my marriage too, because people who have narcissistic personality disorder, that's how they view things too, is they're either above people or they're below them.
Let me
So
ask you
I
oh,
go ahead.
let me ask you, did you say why you went to what made you ultimately decide to go to the 12-step program versus therapy or whatever other programs may have been out there? And just one more thing. So when you're saying that you being humble or talking down about yourself or what have you was your way of doing it, my way of doing things was like beating my chest, tooting my own horn, right? Because nobody did it for me. Nobody gave me praises growing up or supported me with positive words. So I had to do it for myself, even though I didn't believe it. Does that make sense? I was like, I'm the baddest itch on the block, da 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 da. Look at what I got, Jenny from the block kind of deal. But I didn't believe that I was worthy. I didn't believe that I was stepping to life on the red carpet like that. But I always touted like I was. If nobody's going to do it for me or support me, I'm going to do it for myself. But I didn't believe. So go ahead, girl.
Mhm. I didn't believe either. So I often was told that I was unapproachable and arrogant. And I was so confused when people would say that because I talked so horrible to myself until I went to this program where we worked every single day. I mean, they say 90 meetings in 90 days. I mean, I worked this hard. And the reason I went with this one is because I saw I'm going to hurt my kids and I'm going to lose them and I'm going to die because that's what happened to my grandma. If I don't take this seriously and go to the program that everybody says actually works. Like I can't, like I said, I was handcuffing myself because I was so scared of hurting my kids that I had to go to the program that people say works the best. And they say, so many rehab programs have like a 90% fail rate or more. And so I didn't want to go into a program and fail because I couldn't fail because I didn't want to hurt my kids. I watched my grandma die of this. She went in and out of the hospital and nearly died 13 times. It was the 13th time that she died, where she had drank so much that she was toxic, poisoned, and going to die. And I just didn't want to live like that. It was very important to pick the program and to take it very seriously so I didn't hurt my kids. So I get into the program and things start getting better. But here's the thing. I realized, man, I can quit this addiction with alcohol. Why can't I do that with food? And I knew there was a problem there and that it was out of control. And so my solution was I'm going to get this surgery. They say it works for everyone. I'd seen other biggest losers lose their weight and keep it off. And I thought this is going to surgically fix my food addiction. And it didn't.
Did
Ah.
you have any complications? Did you initially lose weight and then regain it? What was that like? And for what period of time? From surgery to weight loss to weight regain to whatever you went through.
So prior to the surgery, I had gone from when I was pregnant with my daughter, I had preeclampsia. I got up to 330 pounds with preeclampsia pregnant. After she was born, I peed off like 60 pounds. You imagine just peeing and peeing and peeing and peeing, and then boom, you're 50, 60 pounds lighter. It felt amazing. So that propelled me into running and restricting like I'd already done. I got all the way down to 220 pounds. So I lost what, 40, 50 pounds running and restricting. And then the weight started coming back up. And I was like, I can't do this again. I'll lose my mind because I already did this on The Biggest Loser. I already did this with the Atkins diet. I already did this with the beach diet. I can't do this. And so that's when I reached out for surgery. And I initially lost about 60 pounds before it started going back up. And the reason it stopped was because I was so inflamed and I started having hypoglycemia. So I was constantly getting sick. And now I've got this insulin. I didn't know all this at the time. It took years and years and years to figure this out. I'm a hyperinsulin responder now because food is going into my digestive system so quickly because we get rid of 120 centimeters or something. You get rid of a bunch of intestine that gets rerouted down. So you lose all this intestine. So when you eat, the food goes right into your bloodstream. Then they give you horrible advice like, oh, just liquid diet. Well, liquid goes right into your bloodstream. Eat small portions, all this stuff. Eat this garbage food, eat sugar-free jello and all the keto products. And I was sick. And so now I've got all this insulin, which is the fat storage hormone flowing through me in an abundance. And this went on for the last about 10 more years. Yeah, it's been 10 years. And so I'm fighting for the rest of this time until I find carnivore. Shortly after the gastric bypass, so
Mhm.
I had gastric bypass. The next day, my husband faked a cold and was like, here's the kids because I have a cold. And I'm like, I just had surgery. And so I went back to work 4 days later, because I
Ooh,
needed them to go to daycare because I couldn't physically take care of them. So that's kind of when I knew my
okay.
marriage was over.
Yeah. Dang, girl. That's a lot. That is a lot. And I was one of those people who, before being educated and really learning, I always thought that people that opted for weight loss surgery were taking the easy route out. However, I had a lot of coworkers that had, weight loss surgery. And I've worked with these people for years and they gained their weight back. They struggled, they aged prematurely. They just looked really not well, And then when I got more educated
Mhm.
about it, it really is a hard, hard road. And now, how does that affect the way you are able to eat your meals now? Because, like, I'm an OMAD girl, one meal a day, straight up volume eater, right? So, how does that have an impact on how you're able to eat your meals now?
I can eat in abundance. Like I can eat a 10-ounce steak now. I'm not going to be the one eating a 20-ounce steak, but so it does have its restriction, but my body fluids changed, like the stomach acids and stuff changed so that I can move meat through. I'll never be an all matter probably. I wouldn't be able to get enough in. The malabsorption goes away after like 6 months, except the nutrients. So I've had to have iron infusions, I've had hair loss, I've had nutrient deficiencies. It triggered some inflammation, so my it triggered my autoimmune to get worse. That's not something I've ever fixed yet. I'm still working on that. I forgot what your question was. But
So,
it's just it I can eat food.
so you can eat food, but it's in smaller portions. Are you eating like 3 squares a day and a snack, or are you having two snacks in one meal? Or
I'm trying to eat 3 meals. That's what I'm shooting
okay,
for. But there's some ways around this in the carnivore diet if people are interested, because it can be difficult at first, but your stomach gets better. Because at first, when I first went carnivore, it was difficult to eat hamburger, it was difficult to eat eggs, it hurt my stomach, but the stomach fluids did change, but in the meantime, you could eat things like pemmican, you could have dehydrated meats, you can really get that nutrition in a smaller package. There's things you can do, more rendered fats, to help things move through your digestive system. There's things you can do until your body adapts. But yeah, I'm able to eat food now. But what I can't here's the one thing that it does affect. I can't go back to eating vegetables because
mm,
that's I was down to meat and vegetables and I was still having hypoglycemia. So if I go back to eating plants, my hypoglycemia comes back.
yeah,
So
I remember you
carnivore isn't a
saying
cure, it's a
something about
band-aid.
that. About that, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like you were saying that you would be walking, exercising, or taking care of your kids, and you would just have those moments. Can you elaborate a little
The
bit more on that?
hypoglycemia was
Yeah.
debilitating and it really actually got worse after my divorce. So that the trauma must have perpetuated the insulin or must have perpetuated the inflation. And when you talk to people who've had an abusive marriage and then an abusive divorce and post-separation abuse, they have autoimmune disease. This is like 90% of the population that's had an abusive marriage or abusive post-separation. They have autoimmune disease. So that inflammation plus my surgery, um, caused the hypoglycemia. I didn't know this for years. It took me years. I went to 20 different doctors. I went to endocrinologists. I went to all kinds of people and nobody could help me. They basically told me to eat sugar every 5 minutes so that my blood sugar wouldn't drop. You know what happened? I would eat a little bit of sugar, something like some peanut butter, honey, whatever. What did they tell you to eat? A piece of bread. And my blood sugar would come back up and then it would dive. And so I quickly learned I needed to eat low carb. What I didn't learn until I went carnivore is how good it feels to fast when you have this problem. It feels because your insulin is just so a wreck. So I mean, and so it would be stress induced. Like I'd get a text message from my ex-husband about the recent game he was playing with my children or the funny game he was playing in court, and my blood sugar would drop. Throwing a birthday party, blood sugar drop. Go to the grocery store, blood sugar drop. So it was debilitating until I went carnivore. But Rose, we've talked so much
Yeah.
about me. I'd like to
Yeah.
hear,
Yeah.
after your teenage years, could you
Yeah.
fill us in on what happened and how you've dealt with trauma since then?
So, just like I said earlier, just working through it, bibliotherapy, doing the TV shows, mimicking a healthy, what I thought was healthy. But I got married at 18. I only knew my husband for 3 months and we got married. And then I had my daughter a couple of weeks before my 20th birthday. So I was really struggling on looking for mother like figure to help me to be a mother, right? But there were none. There were some on TV, there were some through the books and whatnot. And when my daughter turned 5, she went to school full time. We had her in a full time kindergarten. So I went to school. I worked weekends and did all this stuff. So I got my associates. So that's where my love of learning really started. um, I learned more about myself because I wanted to be a social worker so I could save the world, help everybody else while neglecting myself, right? Be the savior.
Mhm.
But I started learning about myself, right? I started looking to my instructors to give me examples of the good in the world, that there are good people in the world, right? And so it was just purely education, just self directedness, just being intuitive, knowing that there's a right way, there's a wrong way, and there's an in between way. Sometimes I chose the in between way. Most of the times I chose the right way for whatever situation that there was. And one thing that I never wanted to do was to put my daughter in daycare because of my childhood. So me and my husband worked really well together as far as working opposite. So he was the breadwinner during a certain part of our marriage in the early years. He was the breadwinner, so I had to work around his schedule and around my schooling and stuff to make sure that we were covered or that my daughter was covered. Um, and going into corrections was probably the best thing for me because I really, really, really thrive on structure because I had no structure. Growing up, I had no structure and I really, really like structure. I kind of want to know what's happening next. I want to be in control. So it was the perfect position for me. But I honestly love people and learning, from people about people because in one way or another, we're all interdependent. And even though I'm learning from people, I'm also learning something about myself, right? So, food, alcohol, clothing, shopping, compulsively learning things, that just kept me busy. There was nights where I would stay up, Adrian, if I was taking like a personal training course or I was taking a course, instead of finishing it in 6 or 9 months as they had laid it out, I would finish it in like 2 to 3 months, like a fraction of the time I would stay up all night. And when you talk about anxiety, was it you that was talking about anxiety? We talked about that a little bit, I think, anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
I
I was
used to,
racked with anxiety until carnivore.
so I would say that I never experienced anxiety. It was always depression. So depression showed up all the time, right? But I just learned how to manage it, poorly manage it, but managed it for me. But as I reflect back, there was a lot of instances that, yes, it was actual anxiety because I thought that was something for white people. For white people, anxiety I can get with depression, but anxiety, no, 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 this sister's in control, right? So a lot of that was riddled throughout there. And even with the ketogenic diet, I was still going through the motions, very dark days and whatnot. But carnivore, it's just like it's a straight no chaser, right? This is what you eat and put it on repeat, and you don't have to think about it. So, how did your anxiety subside with carnivore as opposed to with whatever else you had been doing prior?
Wait, hold on. I missed a part of your story though. So
Oh,
you
oh,
have your
okay, my
daughter.
bad.
Wait,
Yeah,
you get married,
yeah,
you have your daughter, or vice versa, whatever, right? Did you
yeah.
get
No,
married first or your daughter
got
first?
married at 18 and a half. Had my daughter right before I turned 20. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. And when do you gain the weight?
Oh, so my weight started creeping on very gently, but it didn't appear and stay until I got pregnant and until after I had my daughter. So I'm 6 feet tall. My max was 300, as far as I know. It could have been more, but the scale didn't go beyond that. And it kind of stayed between 280 and 300 with my yo yoing for years on end until I finally thought I was doing something for myself in 2001. And then that's where I had a good stretch of 110 pound weight loss, but I was very compulsive with it. I was just couldn't think of anything else. I had to do so many miles a day, 2 o'clock in the morning before going to work at 4, whatever it was. I had to get my exercise in before, during, after, whatever. So it was a crazy 10 or 12 years until um, perimenopause and then eventually menopause. And then the weight started creeping back up to 228. And that was a lot. No, was it 238.8 in 2018? And then I hit my rock bottom, right? And I was like, this shit has got to stop. Yeah. And then that's when I left
Yes.
service. I left service the following year. And then I finally figured it out. Yeah. Yeah.
So how old were you when you were on TV?
I was about mid
I'm bad at
30s.
math. Sorry.
It's okay.
You were in your
Probably about
30s?
33, 35, up in there, yeah. And Adrian, I don't know if you remember, but my diet history started at 12. I started becoming a professional dieter at 12 with X-Lax, Dexatrim, and Tab. Those were my three main jams. Binging compulsively, binging, and then like you, restricting.
Mhm.
And I did stop using the X-Lax when I was pregnant. And as soon as the 6 week checkup hit, I started back to using X-Lax again. Yeah, it's insane after giving
Do you
birth.
have any
But
ramifications of that today?
well, I had always had constipation. And as far as I could remember, it's because of what I was eating. I never ate food, it was always junk food. That was my fuel, right? Junk food. And so, even though I say that I was constipated, if I was on a proper diet, human diet, or what have you, that might not have been an issue. And because I abused laxatives so much for so long, any relief I got in doing number two was because of the laxatives and stuff. So I can't say if I had long-term repercussions, but I do know that when I was doing the ketogenic diet, I was very gassy, very constipated. It was very uncomfortable because of all the vegetables. I thought I loved vegetables, right? And then when I went to carnivore, I had to mix and mingle, tinker here and there, increase the fat, do this, do that. But now I don't have an issue. I don't have an issue at all. Girl, I'm regular. Regular.
I wish I could
Oh,
say the
yeah,
same, but
yeah,
I was regular. So I was
yeah,
chronically constipated for like 10 years. And they tell you Miralax and water and
yeah,
vegetables, vegetables and
yeah,
water, vegetables and
yeah,
water. So here I'm like jamming all these vegetables,
yeah,
horrible, warm, stinky gas, so
yeah,
bad, and no poop, and it's just awful. And then I went carnivore and I'd never been so regular. That adaptation period, I was like, praise the
mhm.
Lord. Things are moving. I know some people dread the adaptation, which is diarrhea, everybody. But
Yeah,
I was grateful for the movement and everything was
yes.
regular and great until I started
Mm,
this medication I'm on for my chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Then, as far as anxiety, you'd asked about the anxiety. I had
mhm,
this feeling inside my heart constantly, constantly. And it didn't matter if I tried Boost Bar or, I don't even remember what they're all called. W
mhm,
all the medicines, they gave me all of them because everything that I ever came in with, all the issues I came in with, they'd always blame it on mental health, everything mental health, and so they'd throw all these drugs at it, none of which did anything for that feeling inside my heart. I've got God, I'm trying to pray, I've got AA, 12-step program, whatever that's called, uh
mhm.
I got the 12-step program. That's not making that feeling go away either, even though I'm working at it. And, it wasn't until I went carnivore that that feeling went away.
Yeah.
How about you? Did
Amazing.
you have the same? Oh, but I mean, yours you said was more of like a down, right?
Mine was more
Did
of a
that improve at
depression.
all with the diet change?
So, mine was more I think I'm oh, it just dropped. But anyway, mine was more of a depression just from early childhood forward, right? And so, with that being said, there was just some very, very dark moments after I left service trying to figure my life out. But unlike you, I didn't go get help. I wasn't on medication. My help was drinking black coffee because I found out very, 25, 30 years ago that black coffee or coffee in general helped and exercise helped. Sleep probably would have helped if I would have went to sleep, right? But I'm not a sleeper. So as I transitioned from carnivore, I mean, I'm sorry, the ketogenic diet, getting used to not going to work every day, the pandemic, all that good stuff, everything started to even out kind of like naturally. And so all I can say is that I'm no longer fueling the monster, the ugly head, right? With the sugar, the highs and
Mm,
lows, the blood sugar roller coaster probably had a lot to do with it more than anything. And so now
mhm.
my days when I get a little kinda iffy, I just take a day off from work and just go work out a little bit longer or whatever it is, right? So, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So, with medication, did you have to go through different medications to find the right one, or was it just a temporary stint to get you through a certain part of your life? Or how did that work for you?
I mostly tried medication postpartum because they would blame everything on being postpartum,
Okay.
but I think a lot of postpartum is for nutrition. I think that having babies is incredibly nutrient expensive, and we're eating these foods that we think are super nutritious, but the reality is that the nutrition in them is not bioavailable, nor are the
Mm,
supplements that we're taking. And so this
mhm,
last baby, I had a midwife that we were going to birth at home,
mhm,
and she told me to eat all the red meat, and she said, "If I can eat 12 eggs a day, to please do it and have plenty of butter." And she said this made the best blood, so she was kinda one of the people to switch my brain. She also told me to start drinking salt water because she said it was important for us all to have this salt, and so she just kinda changed everything. This was the first baby I didn't have postpartum. Like, I truly did not have
okay.
I had other things because I caught the bad virus, but I did not have
Yeah.
postpartum. So, I think nutrition is really key here, and, I was gonna ask you, but I forgot what I
Yeah.
was gonna ask.
Oh, no
But you never
worries.
tried any of that, and
Yeah.
so you tried keto first or you are keto now?
No, I tried keto first. I tried keto first. So I did keto intermittent fasting December 2nd, 2018. I just went all in after 6 months of contemplating and studying, right? 6 months, girl. 6 months to make that decision. But with that being said, by January of 2020, I switched over to carnivore because I was still binging. I was still
Amazing.
compulsively thinking
So
about
you're
food. I was
4 years
constantly
in.
being, yeah, yeah. But I was being triggered on keto. Some people keto will work for. Honestly, I can binge on blueberries. I'm going to tell you, I can binge on blueberries. And when your system gets really pure and you're able to listen to your body without all those other noises around, and something that tastes too good, you know that it's a no go. And I was probably being
Mhm.
triggered all along, but just couldn't pay attention, right? And I was making foods that were similar to the standard American diet. For me, it was just the
Mhm.
binging. One bite is one too many. It's one too many. It's one too many.
Yes.
I can't have it. So, can we talk for just a few minutes about abstinence or, yeah, abstinence versus moderation? And I'm just going to throw my hands up and say, praise God, I am an absolute abstainer. And if I choose to go into something, I know consciously, cognitively, intellectually what I'm in for if I choose to put that bite in my mouth. Whereas maybe 5 or 6 years ago,
Mhm.
it might have been kind of like, well, I really don't know, but now I know. So let's talk about abstaining versus
Mhm.
moderating. Mhm. So you go. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts
I
on
knew
that?
once I quit drinking that I was an abstainer because
Mhm.
quitting drinking, but the problem with food is you can't quit food. So it's been great though to learn why I called myself keto, but it was definitely dirty keto because I was buying grocery store things that said keto on them. And I thought, I'm keto. I'm awesome, you know? And I was never,
Mhm.
it was like they never satiated me. And true to, and I didn't understand. I would self blame, and I see other people doing this all the time. And I just want to hug them and be like, listen, it's the food, it's not you,
Mhm.
because they will go for a period of restriction and they'd be like, I'm totally satiated and happy. I'm so happy. I'm so happy and I'm so good at this.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
3 weeks later, they're secretly off of plan and they're kicking themselves like, why can't I do this? Why can't I be, they'll say things like, why can't I be strong like you? That's what they'll
Yeah.
say, and it's like, "Nope, it's not." I do the same thing. If I eat keto bread, I eat the whole loaf.
Yeah.
None of it never fills me,
Yeah.
and our bodies want to be full. It also doesn't nourish you. It's full of
Yeah.
things that your body goes, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I need to be nourished and I need to be full, so I need to abstain. Now, I was just talking to a friend about this. There's foods that I can binge on that aren't bad. Like, an
Mm.
example would be cheese. It's a carnivore food, so am I gonna say I'm never gonna eat cheese again? No, but I do know that to have peace in my mind, I mostly need to abstain from that or have very strong boundaries, like, only on the cruise ship or whatever. Only at only at the restaurant where I can't take it
Yeah.
home and eat a whole block of it.
Yeah.
Um, so there's certain foods that are, same with pork rinds. That's a carnivore food, but I can have very, as some people would say, unsober behavior around it. Lisa
Mm.
Wiedemann, she's a carb sober doctor. She would say unsober behavior. How about you?
So my foods, some people say that it's too restrictive, right? And I go, no, it's not restrictive because I have so much freedom. I've already been through the trials and tribulations. I've already spent more than 3 lifetimes, right? 3 lifetimes of eating the food, stuffing myself, going to bed with foods, falling asleep, eating, having food on my nightstand, getting up and the first thing on my
Mhm.
mind is food instead of getting a shower, getting my kid off to school, right? I've had enough of that. And so for me, my fun foods, I do call them fun foods, are the cheese. the cheese and the pork
Yep.
rinds, right? But they're not an everyday food. But I do have sobriety around those two items. So I know that if they're here, like I have a couple of bags of pork rinds, I'm not going to fixate on them until they're gone, right? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
But
Same. Yeah, we have a
yeah.
bag in our there right now. I haven't touched it in 2 months.
Good.
But if I
So
get started, the party might get a little long.
yeah. Yes. So even if there are carnivore foods that are, legally or by policy carnivore foods, you've got to know which ones are good for you and which ones aren't, right? Which ones are
Mhm.
good. Like cream in my coffee, I would never be able to do.
Yes.
Butter, I did the
Yeah.
butter thing a year ago, tried to do a stick of butter every day. I After like 10 days, Adrian, I was like, I can't do this stick of butter because I'm thinking about that stick of butter. So all that butter that I bought, I just threw it in the garbage. I had bought enough for 30 days. I threw it in the garbage because when I started thinking about it instead of at my meal time, it was a no-go. And it's carnivore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to ask
Oh,
you, I've heard you
yeah.
say something multiple times. Like there's like you had said, there's so many parallels with me and you, even though we're a different
Mhm.
age. And
Yeah.
one thing that I don't remember the exact words you said, but that basically like you're obsessive compulsive or like that you really work at things.
Mhm.
And I do the same thing. And I think
Mhm.
that that is maybe it's from the trauma, maybe it's from it, but you say it as if it's a bad thing, but in some ways it's a magnificent thing. Like it's something
Yeah.
that makes people really successful. And so I think, what do you think?
So my obsession, my compulsiveness, my addiction, I wear it like a badge of honor. I understand it for what it is, and I am blessed to know that I am addicted to things. I am blessed to know that I'm a woman of my word, right? And I am blessed to also know what drives me crazy is when people are late, be it coworkers or be it for a meeting or whatever it is in the world. I'm blessed to know that that's a trigger for me. Whereas maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I didn't know that that was a trigger for me and I was just angry. Right. So I'm blessed to know that I'm obsessed with being on time, keeping my word, doing things that I wish were done for me as a young person, right? And so I do wear my addiction as a badge of honor. I'm blessed to have been afflicted with this addiction and to know through all knowing that I can get to where I need to be, to wherever God's going to deliver me. Right. So it wasn't for no reason. It wasn't for no reason. And I do want to share with you just really quickly I do run a women's meetup group. And I host every week. There's several events that I host. And these are in person, these aren't online. And there was a woman that, you know, had texted me yesterday because I don't pick up the phone. She had texted me to say hi. I hadn't seen her for a couple of months. So I texted her back and then she texted me and said, Hey, can I call you? Like it's 9 o'clock at night, but God, you want her to call me? Yeah. So it turns out she's 68. Her demon is alcohol, but I sense this on our encounters that she has some kind of affliction in person, but I just need to be present for her, right? To be that leader for her. And she called me, spoke about it for 30 minutes, 68. She's getting ready to go to a 45-day inpatient. She just wanted to share with people that she trusts and that are supportive of her. And I'm basically a virtual stranger, but I know that I've been called to serve people that are in that capacity or mine. And we talked about the parallels between food addiction, alcoholism, drug of choice, whatever it is. And she goes, I didn't know you were a counselor. I go, yeah, I'm an OG. You didn't know that? So you and I have been called to do something with our life, with our stories, right? Whether it's sharing here for somebody to hear just a part of the 12 step or that bibliotherapy is available just by picking up the quickest book. And being an African American woman in this space, because there's not too many people that look like me, right? So I can easily take the back seat, take my story,
Yes.
and work my coaching practice in private or just with people that I know or word of mouth. But I need to keep showing up. It doesn't matter if my
Mhm.
channel grows or not. I just need to keep showing up. I need to keep showing up to show others that look like me that it is possible, right? It's possible. Anything
Yes.
is possible. Yeah,
And
yeah,
that all humans will
yeah,
feel better
yeah.
if they eat more meat. Yeah, I think
Yes,
that's so important.
yes, yes. But you know what, Adrian,
Yeah,
before we
thank
close
you
out,
for
girl.
being brave enough to do that.
Yeah. Adrian, before we close out, girl, okay, maybe even 3 to 5 years ago, if somebody told you that you were only going to be eating animal products, no packaged food in general, for the most part, no packaged food, what would you have said to them? What would you have said to them?
Been such an extreme person my whole life that I always said, "Oh, okay." More shocking would have been if somebody said 5 years ago, "You're gonna be on YouTube and you're gonna talk about The Biggest Loser."
Yeah.
I would have laughed my head off and said, "No."
Aw, aw.
Because I carried around so much shame, and when I had gained my weight back and I felt like such a failure, there was, backlash, and I never wanted to carry that again, but here I am trying to be brave. Like you said, I feel like I'm being guided by God because
Mm,
I took a really slow path into it. At first, I just kinda told people I knew, then I started sharing some stuff on Facebook, and I don't know, I just let it be what it is, and I feel like this is a calling just like you said.
yes.
So
Can
how
I
about
share just a
you? If
couple?
you would have said so you started 4 years ago, but if you would have said 8 years ago, "Hey, you're only gonna eat meat," what would you have
Well,
said?
actually, my journey started really in 2018, about June of 2018, right? It really did. So if somebody would have told me
Yeah.
then that I would be eating vegetables, meat, and packaged keto foods, I'd have been like, girl, get out of here. Get out of here. That's not going to happen to me. Oh, no. And then even just 4 years ago, if they said you were just going to be eating animal products, I'm like, "You out your mind. Me? Oh, no. No, I'm too cool for that. No, I got enough money to buy whatever I want to eat." But this is what I didn't understand, that you have to change what's going in your body to fuel your body, because what fuels your body is really what's fueling your brain. It's really what's
Yes.
fueling your brain. Your brain is an energy hog. It takes up 25% of the fuel that you put in. So if you put in shit for fuel, your brain is going to operate like shit for fuel, right? I didn't understand that because the
Mhm.
disease was in the way. The disease was in the way of me understanding that, even though it was laid out in front of me and told to me over and over and over again, you got to correct the food before you can correct everything else. And I was trying to correct everything else and still keep the food. Yeah, yeah.
I thought I was eating healthy that whole time because I was eating
Mhm,
what people told me to. Plants,
mhm,
plants, keto, low fat, almond milk, spinach, smoothies,
mhm,
chia seeds.
mhm.
I was eating all the things that I thought were healthy.
Yeah,
And now it turns out those aren't the most healthy.
no,
Meat is the most
no,
healthy. So,
it is
well, this
just
was
one.
awesome. Thank you for
Yeah.
inviting me to work together with you, Rose.
Yes,
We are
yes,
gonna do this again in another 2 weeks
yes,
on a
yes.
Wednesday, right?
Well, we'll check the calendars to
And
make sure.
yeah,
On
it's
a
either Wednesday
Wednesday
or
or a
Thursday in
Thursday.
2
Yeah,
weeks, and we'll get
yeah,
deep again.
yeah.
After the last show, I had what
Mhm.
they call a, vulnerability hangover. Because we
Mm,
talked about things I never talk about it because I don't
mhm,
wanna hurt my family. I don't wanna hurt my dad because
yeah,
I don't ever want him to think that just because the childhood was rough that I think he didn't do a good job. I think he did a great job, and I think he got dealt a really tough we just got dealt a tough path, and
sure.
I think he's a warrior and helped us through it, but I think
Yeah,
this is good because I think every a lot of people have trauma, and it really affects not just your mind, not
yeah,
just your heart, but every cell in your
yeah,
body. So it's important that we figure out how to work through this so we can heal because it's not just
yeah.
the food, it's so much more.
It's so much more. And I think, Adrian, we're going to talk for maybe 2 or 3 minutes after we end this live stream. But what I am really thinking, depending on the time of day, maybe you and I will have to orchestrate a time of day that's going to be available for me to speak more candidly about
Mhm.
relationships
Yes, I
and
know what you're
whatnot.
saying.
Yes, and so,
Mhm.
guys, it's not as though I have to, filter what I'm saying, but there is other people in my space, my immediate 4 walls that I need to consider, but I do love being very candid, because I believe that being open about my relationship, about how I see life will help other people, right? And,
100%.
yeah, yeah. So, all right. So, guys, Adrian, tell them what to find on your YouTube and your Instagram channel because this took me by surprise that I see your name as opposed to Biggest Loser Carnivore. So maybe you can give them a little bit of 411 why we're seeing that tonight.
Because my editor told me that you can't be McDonald's carnivore. You can't be something that's already has a, what do you call it, copyright on it.
Okay.
So we're gonna scrap that, and we're gonna be Adrian. You know what? I am
Okay.
more than the show I was on 18 years
Yes.
ago, but it is an
Yeah.
interesting, fun thing to talk about, that's for sure. So
Yeah.
you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for Adrian K. Gledhill.
Okay, sounds wonderful, and you
And
have such a beautiful name. And actually, I'm going to drop, I'm trying to figure out if I'm gonna drop the coach and just go with Rose AJ, and then also known as Carnivore Girl for Life. I don't know what I'm gonna do, so I'm gonna mix mine up a little bit too, and just maybe make it a little bit
yeah,
more universal with my name or something. So we'll see. So I'm excited about what's to come, Adrian. And guys, thanks for being here. Please like, subscribe, follow, type something in the comments, reach out. And Adrian's YouTube channel is off the chain. It is growing by leaps and bounds. And I am oh so proud of her. So please go support her and do what y'all got to do, y'all. Take care of yourselves first and
and go
foremost before
support
trying to
Rose
take
too.
all right. All right, guys, take care. Bye-bye. So hold on,
Good
Adrian.
night.